Hello and thank you very much for joining us on Upfront on JoyNews. So today our focus is on elections and of course the impact of COVID-19 on politics in Ghana, because this election will be the third and final contest between John Mahama and Nana Akufo-Addo. Having won the 2012 elections, John Mahama lost the 2016 election to Nana Akufo-Addo, and since constitutionally one can be president for 2 terms, whoever wins serves his last term. So that explains why the stakes are very, very high. Indeed, the year started on a political note when the NDC launched the Speak Out sessions to enable their flag bearer, John Mahama, to interact with the electorates to know the challenges facing them. A month into these sessions, the president banned public gatherings, forcing Mr. Mahama to cancel the sessions. Today, our focus is to find out how COVID-19 has affected political activities in Ghana. Will it affect electoral fortunes of the 2 main political parties, that is the NPP and NDC? We'll find out soon on Upfront after this break. And after this break also, I'll show you a report I put together getting into the conversation with my guest, whom I'll introduce to you. My name is Winston Amwa, and this is Upfront. We'll be right back after the break. All right, so welcome back from that short break, and we're very, very glad that you stayed with us here on Upfront. But just before we get to see who our guest is for this evening, it's important that I show you a report that I put together in preparation for this particular program on the impact of COVID-19 on politics in Ghana. February 2020, the NDC launched the Speak Out tour. The tour, which was to take place in all 16 regions of the country, was to enable its leader and flag bearer, John Mahama, to meet, interact with, and listen directly to the people of Ghana. The party's manifesto team was to accompany Mr. Mahama to take advantage of the tour to listen to the views of the grassroots and incorporate them in the party's manifesto. Having toured the Western North, Ahafo, and Upper East regions, Ghana recorded cases of coronavirus, causing the president to ban public gatherings.
All public gatherings, including conferences, workshops, funerals, festivals, political rallies, sporting events, and religious events such as services in churches and mosques, have been suspended for the next 4 weeks.
Political campaigns took a hit. This caused the flag bearer of the NDC, John Mahama, to suspend the Speak Out tour. Even though the partial lockdown has been lifted, the ban on public gatherings is still in force. So how has this impacted political activities in this election year? I caught up with political scientist and lecturer at the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana, Dr. Isaac Owusu-Mensah, who in 2016 correctly predicted victory for the NPP.
The season of the campaign will be shortened as compared to the previous times, because as we speak now, if it had not been the COVID-19, NPP will be seriously campaigning now for the 149 constituencies that they were going to have the primaries on. That would have been 25th of April, some few days from now. That's the coming Saturday or so, I guess. And then NDC probably will have also come out with their running mates by now. But now all this is suspended, and therefore the time of the campaigning will also reduce. The political parties, the time to campaign will be short, and for them, the shorter the campaign season, the better, because the amount of resources that they will have disbursed during the longer campaign season will be reduced, and therefore everybody will have to be on board.
For the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, apart from the NDC's inability to organize parliamentary primaries in some 20 constituencies, the party has fallen.
Indeed, we're going to do the next batch of primaries the Saturday after the president's first directives. So we had prepared everything, but we immediately held a meeting and announced that health first. So we have suspended all our political activities.
However, for General Secretary of the NPP, John Boadu, the effect is enormous.
For us in politics, it's because we do mass mobilization, because we do mass gathering, mass meetings. its impact is enormous. As you are aware, we're expected to have parliamentary primaries for where we have sitting members of parliament to the 5th of April. Because we still have in place social distance measures or restrictions with regards to mass gathering, public gathering, rallies and all that, we have to postpone it indefinitely. We're also expecting by May 2nd to have launched our campaign.
So how will the ban on public gatherings affect the political fortunes of the NPP and the NDC?
As for the elections and so on, we are not concerned about elections or discussing elections, discussing registration, discussing this, discussing that. Because the same people, if we are saying that the health crisis is an emergency, and if we are not careful, we don't act properly, it can consume us. We cannot be seen to be discussing what will happen after the health crisis, because if we don't act well now, we can be consumed such that there will not be any tomorrow for us to be talking about.
But John Boyd is very optimistic his party will win the 2020 elections.
For us in the New Patriotic Party, we believe that if elections is held today, we will win, because we've done so much.
The economic conditions of electorates play a major role in the electoral choices, and how the governing party responds to these play an even bigger role. During the lockdown period, government rolled out various packages to support small businesses, the poor and the vulnerable. Dr. Wusumensa believes the NPP has taken advantage of this reality. He explains further.
And I think so far, apart from the lifting of the ban that people have been against, that they are not very happy with, all kinds of misfeeling, all the steps that the government have taken so far, people have appreciated it, except this one. But as the expert always keeps saying, we don't know and don't have all the information. So if the government also get the lifting right, that is really going to be their advantage. What I was a bit surprised was that I think NDC should have also come on board, strongly on board, not necessarily doing their own thing, because all the resources that the government, the NPP or the government is putting on the ground, it's not from the NPP, it's from the government. So NDC should have joined them in the distribution of the food. We are also here to help the distribution of it, so that will reduce the strength that and the advantage that the incumbent government will have. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. So incumbent government really have a lot of advantage to its side in terms of distribution of their resources. And normally when it goes to elections, people reward political parties for what they have done and what they have not done.
Another factor that is central to the upcoming election is the voters' register. The Electoral Commission has been emphatic that there cannot be a credible election without a new voter register. Director of Electoral Service at the EC is Dr. Sribo Kwaku.
As far as the Commission is concerned, we are saying that we can only ensure credible register with a new register.
Okay, but that brings back my question, and this is relevant, if you may. In the midst of the uncertainties brought on by COVID-19, nobody knows when this is going to pass. Is the EC at least now reconsidering that and saying, in a push come to shove, we will have to shelve this and just do limited? Is that something you're considering?
Then can I ask that question?
Please do.
In the phase of the COVID-19, are you also thinking of not having election 2020?
I don't know. I mean, it's something that the Electoral Commission has to do.
Anybody in the Electoral Commission, knowing the resources that we have, knowing the situation of the register, will go for a new credible register. I
totally get that, but I don't know if you can answer me. Is there a thinking around what if? It's not possible.
And that would defeat our argument that if we are to have credible election 2020, we need a new register.
Okay.
There's been a ban on public gathering, and with the Electoral Commission postponing the compilation of a new voters register, there's still uncertainty about the way forward. But the NPP's John Boyd says the new register is a necessity.
There's no way we won't have a new register. You must understand this. Doing an additional or limited registration exercise clearly shows that you don't have an old register. There's no way we can have an election in December without a new register. If the Electoral Commission, per the condition that we find ourselves, decide to either maintain the old register or either validate the old register, they will necessarily have to do a registration exercise, be it a limited of some sort, in order to have a register that is credible, that contains almost every voter that has reached the age of voting. So there's no point. We can't use the old register without adding on, either validating it or adding on in terms of those who have turned the age of 18. So as for the old register, it's out entirely.
For Johnson Asiedu Nketia, the NDC's priority is the health of the people.
We choose to spend all our efforts to concentrate on, getting back the health of the nation first. Okay. Then after that, other things. In the Bible, they say, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all other things shall be given unto you. So let us focus on this. So those who think that they can be dealing with one hand on trying to take unfair advantage of the elections, and the other hand pretending to be putting the health first, in the end, they will suffer the consequence. But we think that the health of the people first, and that is what we are. There are so many unknowns, so let us talk about how we can get out of the elections and not out of the pandemic, and not be talking about what will happen after that. You see, the people who are talking about what will happen, are we going to postpone the elections, are we going to do this, are we going to do this after the pandemic, after the pandemic, after the pandemic? Who is going to give you the situation you are talking about after the pandemic?
But as John Boydu knows something which is about to happen.
Executive Instrument 64 contains the restrictive measures with regards to public gatherings, with regards to funerals, with regards to conferences and all that. And that is ending by 26th of April. We don't know what the president will do, but if at that point, if the effect of the virus has come down, then of course it's possible some lessening of the measures can happen. And we hope that by middle of May, end of May, if the burden has come down, then if the restriction is lifted, then the Electoral Commission can also devise ways of ensuring that they do what they are mandated to do in a manner that will not put the life of our people at risk. Because even in this same scenario, you have a country like South Korea having a successful election with a turnout that is highest as compared to even normal times. You have Mali just last 3-4 days having a successful election and all that. So I think that we are in a very difficult position. We are in a very difficult situation. These are not normal times, but because we must have the election on December 7th, we in the New Patriotic Party don't ever think and assume one day that there should be an extension on the mandate of our presidency or for our parliamentary candidates just for even an hour. So we believe that the efforts that the president has put in terms of devising measures to curb this disease that is afflicting everybody will be successful in order for us all to be able to go about our normal duties without hint or late.
The stakes are high, the controversies will continue, and sometimes the discussions will hit deadlocks. Ghana prepares for a crucial election in 8 months. But no matter how high the interest may be, the people, the citizenry, must be at the center of it all. Winston Amoah, JoyNews. Right, so that's a report I put together on the impact of COVID-19 on politics in Ghana. But we're very fortunate to be joined by the national organizer of the governing NPP, Samia Oku. Thank you very much for joining us, Samia Oku. I believe you're doing very well. And so you are national organizer of the NPP. How has the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic affected the performance of your functions?
Well, let me say a very good evening to your cherished viewers and all those joining us here inside. Of course, we are in extraordinary times, and for me as national organizer of the NPP, my daily routine for me and the field workers of our party was constantly to engage the base of our party, to also be moving from place to place, engaging our people, our constituencies, our regional party, and so on and so forth. But now with this ban on public gatherings and also with the restrictions and all, it will be unreasonable for you to even attempt to execute your duties as stipulated in the NPP's constitution. So just as the president has always been saying, we are in extraordinary times. We are not in normal times. And it's gravely affected everybody around the globe. And
so in effect, you've not been able to perform your functions as a result of COVID-19.
Well, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. In terms of the functions of being on the field day to day, engaging constituents, now you have to switch to digital. And there are some of your people, you cannot engage them via Zoom as we speak now. So definitely, it has its own effect on our day-to-day movement. But this is the new normal, so we have no choice than to live with the new normal.
I'm certainly sure that the lifting of the lockdown would come to you as a good news, because at least you can move around, move out of Accra, move to other parts of the country, and be able to communicate or get in touch with your party base, isn't it?
Well, ordinarily, yes, but again, you also have these restrictions that we have, and that's through the executive instrument, as my General Secretary was talking about. With these restrictions in place, you still cannot gather more than 25 people. Even with that, you have to observe serious health protocols, with this attendance, social distancing, and all. So clearly, you can move out of Accra, but the very things that you used to do, you may not be able to do them effectively.
So let's look at what you would have done, but for the outbreak of COVID-19 and its associated sanctions. What would you have done if this wasn't in place? What programs had you put in place for the period?
Well, among other things, the training of our party executives, on the campaign strategies and what to do, and also engaging voters on the ground and all these things. But now, because of that, you may not be able to also go to that very people that you have to engage and talk to them about it. Apart from that, the very duties of the organizer to also ensure mobilization of people. At the heart of every political party is mobilization. And as organizer, you are key to the mobilization efforts of the party, whether in government or in opposition. So mobilization, well, definitely means that you have to be out there. You cannot mobilize in vacuum. It's not as easy as mobilizing the very grassroots of our country through the powers of digital technology and all that. So clearly, sometimes, for instance, if you want to engage traders, if you want to engage mechanics, if you want to engage all manner of people, lotto operators, all these identifiable groups, fisher folk, Winston, it's not as easy as asking all of them to have a date with you on Zoom. It's totally different.
But have you actually tried having a date with them, through the usage?
I'm trying, but it's not easy. I'm trying, definitely. We are trying to adjust to the new normal, as I'm saying, but it's not easy. It's not easy as people think it will be. But you can't blame anybody. We're struggling with this deadly virus, causing wreaking havoc across the globe. Apart from, I think, some few countries, I think South Korea, Mali, they have successfully had their elections. In the case of South Korea like this, South Korea was, I think, one of the early countries to have been hit by the virus after China. And then they aggressively reduced, because of contact tracing and aggressively fighting this pandemic, we're able to reduce the daily infection rate of 900 to 30. That's late February to late March, from 900 to 30 a day. And then subsequently, the ruling party, that's the Democratic Party, also using that as a major campaign tool, that, look, they've been able to also help hold the fort and the aggressive contact tracing, and combating this pandemic. It is another term. Okay. And the first time they've won in excess, this is the first time that political party, even they won in excess of 160 parliamentary seats out of the 300 seats, with their allied parties also winning 17 seats in addition. So if you go to Mali, it's the same. All I'm saying is that we are in a difficult situation because we're still gradually trying to come out of this pandemic. But I'm very confident that with our good works and with all that we've done and we keep doing, the good people of Ghana to weigh us fairly and take a bold decision when the time comes. My General Secretary was right. We are clear in our minds. We don't want an extension of our mandate beyond an hour. We will certainly get to that particular, issue. But let's look at one thing. I mean, I'm just curious. You talked about trying to, hold mobilized trainings on Zoom and also meet people on Zoom. And so, apart from your, party members that you intended training, have you tried meeting, for instance, other persons, say the mechanics that you talk about? Or some other mass groups through the usage of Zoom? Well, I have tried, but as I'm saying, it's not as easy as.
What was the feedback when you tried? What did they tell you when you tried that?
I'll give you a typical example. I asked a group of some informal sector operators, let me put it that way, those within the lower bracket. For us to convene a meeting on Zoom, we gave it time, and I tell you what, when it was time out of the, say, 100 people, because of the Zoom, you can even have in excess of that. We only had about 9 to 10 who were able to make it. Because of the technicalities involved, you have to fix this, you have to log in this link, this ID, this password. So it's gradual. People will get educated with time. But be as it may, I'm saying I'm not alone in this. I'm sure many of my colleagues will also be facing similar challenges. But we have to make do with the new normal, see how we can turn to our advantage and see how we can make the best out of it. God willing, if we get out of this pandemic, I am convinced that this new normal will be with us for quite a long time. Wednesday now, washing of hands, I quite remember it was when we were kids that they would tell you after using the washroom, you wash your hands. Is that correct? Now It goes beyond just after using the washroom. Now you can move from an office A next door to the same office A, office B. You still have a Veronica bucket with liquid soap and hand paper towel. You still have to perform the same function. No matter how long you keep there, even if it's 5 minutes and you move to the next place, you are faced with the same protocol. So this new normal will be with us for a long time. Look, everybody's scared of this virus, and it's rightly so because of the numbers. As we speak today, we are in the millions in terms of those who have been affected by the pandemic, and tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to have died. So it's not an easy thing.
So how will that affect your, electoral fortunes? Since you've talked about the inability to do a lot of the things you had planned to do, how would it affect your electoral fortunes?
Well, I followed your interview with Dr. Osumensa, if I'm right.
Sure, you're right.
Dr. Osumensa predicts that the campaign period is going to be very short.
Do you agree with him?
Can you hear me?
Yes, do you agree that the campaign period is going to be very short?
It will be very short because, look, right from April, people would have started seriously campaigning. The actual campaign normally heats up the last 6 months to elections. But as we speak, the timetables of the various political parties seem to have suffered some few dislocations here and there. The largest opposition party, as we speak, they've been unable to even nominate or select their vice presidential candidate. The New Patriotic Party, the governing New Patriotic Party, as we also speak today, we were scheduled to have our parliamentary primaries on the 25th of April. and that of our presidential primaries as well. Then looking forward to also having an outdoor event on the 2nd of May where we will outdoor our presidential candidate and that of all our parliamentary candidates. But now we'll be unable to perform that same function on the 2nd of May. So meaning that you have to then readjust and push that event further. That will definitely affect the period of your campaign and the planning that you need to do, the logistic arrangement and deployment. So not that it will affect our fortunes per se as a political party. We believe that on a scale of 0 to 100, the NPP, we have performed in excess of 80%. Based on the promises we made to the people and our honesty, our transparent nature, and the courage of our president and his determination. Everybody saw what we did the first 3 years of the NPP administration from 2017, 2018, 2019. Unfortunately, none of the political parties in 2016 could predict that they were going to face a pandemic midway into the administration or latter part of the first term.
Exactly, so but Sami, talking about these things, Sami, if you look at it, so the major opposition party, elected their parliamentary candidates. They left about 20 or so of them to be elected in mainly the Ashanti and Eastern regions. You haven't elected parliamentary candidates in 169 of constituencies where you have sitting MPs. And the NPP's lessons of 2008, when you were in power, influenced the decision of having parliamentary primaries early. We're in April, we're getting into May. The challenges of 2008 primaries, your party says, affected you. Wouldn't that affect you going into election 2020?
Well, first of all, I disagree. I disagree on this point. We have conducted primaries for 106 orphan constituencies.
Yes.
That should also be made clear. Where we have sitting MPs, we are talking about 168 out of 169 because the 169th seat, that is Ayawaso West Wobon, we already have a candidate going into 2020. Sure. As affirmed by the National Council of our party. Now with the 168 seat, we have started the process. It's not that we are now about to begin the process. We're going through the process of opening up nominations, filing, vetting. Then after vetting, we even have published results. And then those who were not able to make it at the vetting stage, they've also appealed against the various decisions. And then subsequently, what is next is for the National Executive Committee of the party and the National Council of the party. They are clothed with powers when it comes to fixing dates and reviewing processes for the selection or election of our parliamentary candidates and that of our presidential candidate. So we are not about to begin the process. We've had a situation where we've even elected parliamentary candidates in August in an election year. We also have learned our lessons of previous elections, and that's why we've also adopted various strategies, reconciliation effort, and we also engage in the various aspirants as we speak. We're engaging them on day-to-day basis so that as much as possible we will have a less acrimonious contest, because every contest is not going to be like taking ice cream in the park. People will definitely feel peeled at the end of the day. So we have a conflict resolution committee. We've also set up robust systems in the various regions and that of the constituents. We know time will be of essence. We know that time is not on our side, and we are not oblivious of the fact that we need to work extra hard so that we limit the impact and the damage of the pandemic.
Yeah, but talking about the fact that you actually know that there are going to be challenges, and that's how come you put in place all these measures. Isn't that in itself an indication that, you know, as a party, you find yourself in times that are not the best of times? Because if you had actually organized your elections earlier, you wouldn't have found yourself in this kind of situation, and so it could negatively impact you.
Well, but as I'm saying, nobody could predict that we're going to have a pandemic. So, and the MPP too, it is in our nature. When we are in government, we do elect even our presidential candidate a year before elections or in the same year of the elections. And we have several examples to also defend this. And that of our parliamentary candidate as well, National Council and National Executive Committee of the party took decisions based on some considerations that internally we felt that it's important that we adopt that strategy and take those decisions at that time for some measures to be put in place.
But talking about measures being put in place, and you make a reference to Dr. Owusu-Mensah, are you by this suggesting that, you know, your party believes that you've handled COVID-19 very well, and so that is going to play to your advantage come December 2020?
Well, the president deserves our praises, our applause, and I encourage him. The biggest mistake we would have committed, Winston, was to have listened to the NDC and the minority at that time when the pandemic started. The NDC did advise that we should go bring our students locked up in Wuhan and Ghanaians locked up in Wuhan to Ghana. They enforced this with press conferences, press statements, and all. Today we've been vindicated. Countries that
how have you been vindicated? How have you been vindicated?
Yes, countries that did embark on this adventure: Italy, Spain, United States, United Kingdom, Iran. I'm sure you've seen the havoc caused by this deadly virus in these countries. And many of them, they also do cite the examples of bringing these residents in Wuhan, whom at that time, many of them had been exposed to the virus, but they had not been tested. And then even in the United States, they had to take a vessel to be on the high seas for several weeks. And day after day, people were showing signs of the disease. People were showing signs of the virus. And then gradually, those who had been released into the system also had mingled with people. It became very difficult to contact trace, and then they started having the spike. The same thing happened in Italy. The same thing happened in Spain. The same thing happened in the United Kingdom. So I think the first step that the president took was that, look, let's secure our borders. Ghanaians within our
yes,
jurisdiction.
But Sami, talking about these steps that other countries took that affected them, we don't have evidence that any of those students in Wuhan, for instance, who's Ghanaian, has contracted COVID-19. That notwithstanding,
I said residents.
Residents, yes, but there were Ghanaians students, particularly, fighting that they be brought home. But that notwithstanding, we had people coming from, outside the jurisdiction who came into the country with COVID-19. So isn't that the same thing?
Well, but people who had also been exposed to the virus in these jurisdictions that you're talking about. That is why the first step was for us to say that, look, let's instead support those in Wuhan, in China, Ghanaians living there, students, those working abroad there. We supported them with stipends, we supported them with food stuff to make sure that they were kept alive and they had something to also live on and nibble on. Secondly, then the second thing that the Ghanaian government did was also on timely basis, listening to expert advice and ensuring that decisions were backed by data to ensure that, look, every decision that we take, the time to take that decision, the precision that you also needed to ensure that you take those decisions, and also to ensure that you also consider a lot of factors. Look, when we decided to close our borders, it was just timely. People who had come in at that time, we ensured that we also contact trace those who had come in before the ban came into place. And those who came in just within the 72 hours or so that the ban came into effect, they were also quarantined. And out of that 1,000+ people, we had greater majority of these people testing positive. Okay. So every step on the way, this government ensured that we did take decisions that, for me, was in the supreme interest of our country. So
just by way of clarification, are you suggesting that your handling of COVID-19 will be a major advantage for you going into 20?
I think we've shown courage, we've shown honesty, and we've shown that, look, we can do it again.
So would that play to your advantage?
Sorry.
Would that play to your advantage come December 2020?
No, that is what I'm saying. That, of course, I mean, the way we've handled it will also form part of our narrative that when we were confronted with this pandemic, this was our response. This was what we were able to do as a people. We limited the impact. We contact traced. We ensured that, in fact, all over Africa, I think we are one of the countries, if not the highest, to have tested many people and contact traced in terms of fighting this pandemic. It will inure to advantage because I did say from the onset that none of the political parties could predict that they were going to face a pandemic in its first term or when elected into office. So this was quite an unforeseen challenge. And your response, your ability to stand firm, your ability to say that, look, this is what we need to do to get out of this situation. Mind you, we are not out of the woods here. We are not out of the situation. But the steps we are taking, fumigating marketplaces, was not more or less to say fight coronavirus, but also fight the underlying disease and causes of people buying foodstuff from the market that had got infested with diseases and
so in effect
and all that. All these things did help every step in there. We don't have the resources and the capacity like that of the Western world, but within our confines, we've done everything possible to keep our people safe.
So in effect, going into election 2020, part of your campaign message would be your handling of COVID-19.
You don't have to rule that out. You don't have to rule that out because we're confronted with the challenge.
So it will be part of your campaign message.
It's become part of it because when we had, in 2016, we have tens and thousands of people dying out of cholera. Cholera. We've also had instances where people have died through flooding and how it was handled. We had challenges and we had situations where malaria became a killer in our country. So you had also the preparedness of this government, even though we couldn't predict, we couldn't have also predicted that we're going to have coronavirus and pandemic. Our response to this pandemic, for me, has been very encouraging. Nanado has shown leadership, he's shown courage, and I think that for us in the NPP, of course, when we are listing the very things that we believe that we're able to also do for the Ghanaian people, we believe our response to this pandemic should form part of our narrative.
So in also responding to this pandemic, one of the things you've looked at is to also keep an eye on 2020, as in election 2020. Yes, you want to take care of the people, but you also have done so knowing that it's an election year.
We have done this regardless of political interest. And I give you an example. Every action and decision taken by governments as far as this pandemic is concerned has not been politically tainted.
But
if you have to do with feeding the vulnerable, we have been clear in our minds that we use the local assemblies through the Ministry of Local Government and that of NADMO to help distribute these food items, and that of faith-based organizations. The food is not being distributed by the Asylum Down head office of the New Patriotic Party or that of the NPP offices. Again, any decision that we've also taken to support businesses, as President did indicate the other time, support companies, businesses that are in districts, SMEs. We've decided that we use still the structure in place, NBSSI, a state-owned body, to also help assess and support these small and medium enterprises. So every decision that this government has taken, for me, that's one commendable thing. That's not been something that has been politically tainted.
Yeah, but Sami,
the President himself has been clear. He said, let's separate up. This is not the time for politics. Let's separate our politics from this pandemic. But yes, I am saying that in the line of duty, in the courage that he has also exhibited, when we go to the Ghanaian people as well, it should form part of his credit.
Exactly. So if it would form part of your narrative, if it would form part of your campaign, how can you convince us that also in taking these decisions, you did not take them with an eye on December 2020? Because eventually it is going to be part of your narrative for the elections.
Well, there are two things to this. when you are taking the decisions, you are not taking the decisions because I want to save NPP lives or save NDC lives or I want to save CPP lives or whatsoever. We took decisions that we believe that first of all was to also protect lives, first and foremost. Without life, forget about the economy. If the people don't exist, they cannot contribute towards the building of an economy. But what we are saying is that in the discharge of his duties, it's not time for campaigning, but when the time comes for us to also sell to the Ghanaian people decisions that we've taken whilst in government and given account of our stewardship, 4 years of being in government, you cannot wish away this period where the whole world, I can tell you, it's clear that we are leaning on each other. It's clear that everybody, and it's now crystal clear that we need each other even as a people across the world. And in going back to the people, what I'm saying is that this president has demonstrated that he has the resilience, he has the courage, he has the determination to confront future challenges as and when it comes. And so, in effect, you've been able to more or less kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yes, you've been able to help the people, but you've also been able to write the right narrative ahead of election 2020. We've been able to give a good account of ourselves. That even though we could never predict this pandemic, when it did confront us, we didn't abandon the Ghanaian people. We didn't abandon the poor. We didn't abandon households. We didn't abandon families. We didn't abandon our frontline workers. Health workers, I mean. And we didn't turn our back on the Ghanaian people who wished us well in 2016 and did form long queues to make sure that they give Nana Addo a resounding victory. And I am confident and praying that in spite of these challenges that we faced the last few months, we'll still come out as a country. And then when the active political season starts, we should be able to go to the Ghanaian people and give a good account of ourselves. We'll go for a short break now. When we return after this break, we'll also look at one of the things that will play a major role in election 2020, because as a party, your party, the NPP, has always been in support of a new voters register. The ban on public gathering isn't making that possible. And so we'll find out how that is going to impact election 2020 and whether you still would support the compilation of a new voters register. Stay with us. This is Upfront, and my name is Winston Amma. We'll be right back after this break. All right, so welcome back from the short break, and thank you very much. We're very glad that you still stayed with us here on Upfront on JoyNews with me, Winston Amma. Our guest is Sami Oku, who is national organizer of the NPP. We're having a conversation on the impact of COVID-19 on political activity. So, Sami, let's look at one very important thing ahead of election 2020. Now, your party, the NPP, is in support of a new voters register. The ban of public gatherings has made it impossible for the compilation of a new voters register. Would you still want to see the compilation of a new voters register before election 2020? First of all, we have been consistent on this matter, and we will still play by the rules of the game. If the Electoral Commission avails itself and they do come out with a roadmap that, look, this time political parties should prepare for the registration process, and all, we are there and we are ever ready to participate. We believe that, just as the General Secretary of the NPP did say, no matter what, you come out with some form of a new register before 2020, December. I'm saying this because if the Electoral Commission decides that, okay, now I'm not going to compile a new voters register altogether, but I'm going to have a limited registration exercise, that will be added on to the previous register. And that means that you're also going to have a new register. The Electoral Commission says that, okay, so we are going to have a limited voter registration. We need to add on with that of the previous limited registration exercise. That in itself will give you an entirely new register. But there's even a problem, a major problem. Those from Ahafo, Bono East, Oti, Western North, their current codes are not captured in the 2016 voters register. Because in 2016, Bono Ahafo was a region on its own and it had a different code as far as polling stations and regional codes were concerned. So if you want to go with the existing one, anybody who voted, let's say in Shidim in 2016 in their Ahafo region, will have a code that will be inconsistent with the current arrangement as a new region, because every region has a code. And the codes that we used in 2016, now those codes cannot be used again. So sometimes I really don't get the argument when people are so up in arms against the EC compiling a new register. Because if you also don't resolve some of these challenges, we will have a printed voters register that we haven't done anything to it. People will go to the polls that day to go and vote, and they may not be able to vote.
Yes, but Sami, we have a challenge.
Whether to add your votes to the Bono or to the Ahafo side or to the Bono East.
Yeah, but Sami, we have a challenge currently.
That must be resolved.
Yeah, but Sami, the challenge now is that as a result of the pandemic, we're actually advised to ensure social distancing. And from what we have seen in many of these processes, there isn't enough of social distancing, for instance. I mean, we saw the registration of the NIA, for instance. I mean, there wasn't a lot of social distancing in there. So if we are faced with this challenge and we are not out of it yet, we don't know when the ban would be lifted. The World Health Organization has warned all of us that the second wave could be more dangerous than what it is currently. Wouldn't it be better to wait to ensure that we're totally out of it before we start talking about, the need for a new register? And so if we can't have it before election 2020, we continue with what we have?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The decision is not for us as players to make. We are not the referee. The MPP wouldn't also pretend to be the referee in this game. What we are saying is that we are prepared for any event. If the EC decides that we should have a limited registration exercise, we will be there. But if you are saying there shouldn't be any registration at all, we should go with the current arrangement, that will be defeating a constitutional provision where the Electoral Commission, per its laws and mandate, must conduct some form of registration exercise every year because people would have turned 18. Not conforming to that, not complying with these constitutional provisions can also lead to several and strings of lawsuits. I hope you know that. Because I would have turned 18 this year. Per what we are saying, then that means I wouldn't be given the opportunity to even register, to decide who should be my leader at the parliamentary level, in the constituency level, or at the highest level, which is presidential. So the Electoral Commission is enjoined by the provisions in our constitution, some way, somehow, to conduct some form of registration. It's up to the EC to decide, going forward, that looking at the challenges we are facing, okay, we can still ensure and practice solid and social distancing rules and protocols and ensure that we do have all these protocols being respected and have a general registration exercise. If that's not the case and they even still go for limited, you must still ensure these protocols are observed. Because failure to do that, then you are telling us we cannot be disciplined as a people.
Okay. So
fight this pandemic together.
So on this note, are you saying that, just by way of clarification, if the Electoral Commission has to do a limited voters registration and not the total compilation, you would support it because of the times we find ourselves in?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that for us as a party, we are there. We are still waiting for the Electoral Commission to come out with this. We won't dictate to the Electoral Commission.
Yes, but should the Electoral Commission say we are going to have a limited registration exercise and not the new compilation of a voters register?
Sorry, come again, Winston. I didn't get
I'm saying that if the Electoral Commission says, okay, some persons have turned 18 years, and so we'll give them a chance to register, but we are not going to compile a new voters register, would you be prepared to support the Electoral Commission on that?
Of course, the Electoral Commission will engage all of us. They must give us also the reasons and why also taking that route. What will also be the assurance that people or persons who don't deserve to be on the register are also cleared. Before Charlotte Osei exited, Charlotte herself formed the committee, the Justice V. REC Crab Committee, where it even came up that almost 600,000 people who had passed on to glory were still on our electoral roll. So
but dead men don't vote, Sammy. Dead men don't vote. I mean, if they're dead, they won't vote.
Someone can vote in the name of the dead man.
That's why there's biometric verification.
So in some instances as well, you also have the, so good. you're talking about these biometric verification machines, from what you are saying.
Yes.
The EC is also telling you that these machines, they have reached end of life, end of purpose. So Winston, what do we do? The very referee, the one conducting the elections, is telling you that many of these machines, they've reached their end of life, end of purpose. So how then do you verify that this dead man is not the one voting to elect a president?
In effect, there must be a new voters register before election.
In any form, if you even go for limited registration, for us as a political party, we are ready for any of the options available to the EC. As I said, we don't want to spend a day beyond our mandate. We want to win elections fairly and on the strength of our record in government. If the Electoral Commission decides that we are going to have limited registration, we will also put forward some suggestions of ours. How do we then ensure that we properly validate the register? How do we ensure that, looking at the circumstances we find ourselves, what are the assurances the EC can give? What programs do we have to clean the register as well as we also embark on limited registration? How then do we ensure that machines that the EC is telling us that they have reached their end of life, end of purpose, where will they be taken to? Okay. Who's stronghold or who's weakhold? How are we going to get away or get rid of these machines? So all these are genuine questions that must be asked and shouldn't be wished away. Elections is a serious matter, and the stakes are also high. And if people want to win an election, they want to win fair. People want to lose elections. They also want to be sure that the ground or the table was fair, and I lost fair.
Sami, thank you very, very much for joining us. We're grateful you made time to join us this evening. Sami Oku, who is national organizer of the governing NPP. That'll be all from us this evening on Upfront. I'm Winston Amma. Thank you very much for watching. Keep watching Joy News.